At our number 10 spot, we have almost had a war over a tree. Two US Army officers named Captain Arthur Boniface and First Lieutenant Mark Barrett were axed and butchered until they passed from North Koreans while trying to trim a tree in the DMZ. This would later be known as the Korean Axe Murder Incident. The tree was blocking a checkpoint view, which is why the US decided to chop it in the first place. As you would expect, when the US caught wind that the soldiers passed away in a foreign country, they quickly took action. They created Operation Paul Bunyan, which is named after a mythical lumberjack from North American lore. The operation was very simple. Go to the DMZ and chop it down, except they came with a little few friends of their own. This included hundreds of soldiers armed with machine guns, grenade launchers, and chainsaws. And if that wasn't enough to make this more American, they brought in a 23 vehicle convoy with a tank, 20 utility helicopters, and 7 attack helicopters. Oh, you thought I was done? They also brought in B-52s, F-4s, F-5s, F-111s, and also a carrier which was offshore and a nuclear capable bomber circulating in the area. If you guess that the North Koreans didn't do anything, you are right. At number 9 spot, we have videos of nuclear destruction. Okay, first things first, North Korea has no internet. Well, except for high level officials and some schools, but that's pretty much it. This means their media spreads like a wildfire in a desert. The only thing that did catch fire is when North Korean featured a video simulation of a nuclear missile striking with what appears to be somewhere in the United States, as you can see the flag burning by the end of the video. This video was unveiled during a military parade marking the 105th birthday of Kim Il-sung. This video caused a lot of controversies, especially when it came at a time when the tensions were super high between the US and the Hermit State. For reference, this was in 2017, and by that time North Korea had done a ton of missile testing, and to make things more worrisome, North Korea test launched a suspected intercontinental ballistic missile into the sea this year. At number 8 spot, we have a betrayal at the death camps. North Korea is known for their cruel punishment and their horrendous living conditions. Put these two together and you have some of the worst death camps in the world. Just to give you a little bit of what happens on the inside, many of the prisoners were kept to the brink of starvation. They are forced to do physical demanding labor for hours, torture, subject to chemical experimentation, and sometimes prisoners would be randomly executed, sometimes because the guard didn't like them. One specific story from the Mirror has Shin Dong-hyuk share his experiences in these death camps. When he was 13 years old, he overheard his mother planning to escape the camp. Since he was practically born on the camp, all he knew was to obey and report anything bad in the eyes of North Korea. So he ratted his mom out. He would then recall watching his mom and his brother being dragged out and publicly executed in front of his very eyes. The worst part about this is that at the time he believed he did good because he claimed this is the type of brainwashing he underwent at the camp. At number 7 spot, we have Otter Warm Beer. Warm Beer was a student from UCLA and decided it was time to go somewhere outside of the box. He then went on a trip to North Korea through a Chinese company called Young Pioneer Tours, which is still one of the biggest tours to this day. In the hotel he was staying at, there was a forbidden floor, but he went there anyway and stole a political poster off the wall. This was all caught on film. This is all because a church in Hawaii that he was a part of wanted him to do it. During his confession speech on February 2016, he said this:
I have been very impressed by the Korean government's humanitarian treatment of severe criminals like myself, and of their very fair and square legal procedures in the DPR Korea.
This is a load of barnacles.
Then on March that same year, he was convicted and sentenced to 15 years of hard labor. Negotiations happened, but it wasn't until June 2017 when North Korea released Otto. Except he was in a coma after taking a sleeping pill. It wasn't until he was flown out to the US where he passed away. After this incident, the US government decided to ban all American tourists from visiting North Korea altogether. Another reason not to visit this place. At number 6 spot, we have North Korean ghost ships. Hundreds of abandoned boats from North Korea wash up on Japanese and Russian coastlines each year. Some of the vessels contain the crew's remains, but they're usually just a pile of bones. These ghost ships are thought to be the result of North Korean fishermen becoming lost at sea and dying from malnutrition or weather exposure. The ships are typically old and lack stronger engines, and I mean, it's from North Korea. They're pretty much still living in the 1980s still. However, after an investigation was done, they found that these boats were actually sent out from China as a way for them to fish illegally in North Korean waters, which violates UN sanctions completely. Right in the Humper list, we have Ryugyong Hotel. Sorry if I mispronounced that. This 105-star hotel in Pyongyang was completed in 1992, but by that time, it didn't function as a hotel at all. The building was hollowless and had no windows, which meant complete darkness on the inside. Kim Jong-un wanted this hotel to be the biggest and best hotel in the world, but it completely fell short from that goal. It still remains empty to this day. It's literally just a large structure just overlooking the city, and it's more scary to think that no one actually goes into that building. And in fact, this is the world's tallest unoccupied building. Now many theorists have claimed this building isn't empty and it harbors something more sinister inside. This may be a stretch, but online communities have mentioned that SCPs and other governmental projects are being kept secret in this building, hence why it will never truly open up to the public. At number 4 spot, we have Room 39. Room 39 is a secretive North Korean organization that figures out ways to get funds for Kim Jong-un. This room is in a ruling workers' party building in Pyongyang. The main goal of this room is basically to make sure that Kim and his family never run out of funds, and most of these ways are through illegal means. Legally, they invest in many different precious metals and currencies and some companies, but illegally, which is where they make most of their money, they allegedly make their money through means of narcotics, human trafficking, and most famous, counterfeiting money. The North Koreans are so good at creating counterfeit US dollars that they created a super note, which is supposedly 1-for-1 of a US $100 bill. Some people in the US have actually been prosecuted for distributing the money that was produced in this very room. This room also serves as a place for arms dealing, where they usually sell to terrorist organizations and dictators for money. At our number 3 spot, we have Kim Jong-il's tomb. His tomb is on this list because it just gives everyone other than North Koreans the utter creeps. The mausoleum contains the embalmed body of North Korea's late leader Kim Jong-il, and it was open to tourists for some time. During that time, you could see the leader in this glass box with his body resting inside. Just a creepy sight to see in general, let alone a dictator who causes people to suffer. At number 2 spot, we have the Shincheon massacre. Now before I get started with this one is all up for speculation. North Korea has said this happened while the US has said it was falsified, but forget about what we care about, let's just care about the North Korean side right now. They claim that a mass murder took place in the 1950s during the Korean War. In the town of Shincheon, American soldiers supposedly took the lives of over 35,000 civilians in the course of 52 days. If this was true, this would make it one of the most deadliest massacres in history, but that's if. Now this event is memorialized in the Shincheon Museum of American War Atrocities. Yup, there's a museum on horrible violent acts, and some of the paintings in here are pretty disturbing. At our number 1 spot, we have an election. This one is probably the least scariest on this list, but the fact that people have no right to vote for their leaders is definitely terrifying for me at least. Voting in North Korea is actually a thing. When you're supposed to go in for voting, many people show up super early to show a sign of loyalty. But when they're there to vote, it's just mandatory to vote for the SPA party, otherwise known as the Supreme People's Assembly. There's also supposedly private voting booths, but seriously, what do you have to hide? If you do attempt to vote for someone else, the police will follow you and find any ways to incriminate you or declare you insane. Coming in at number 10, we have 13 Curves. This is a very dangerous road in Marcellus, New York, named the 13 Curves. Over the past 60 years since its construction, this road claimed the lives of many drivers from unfortunate accidents. None are more notorious than the story of a couple on their wedding day. Drivers claim they see a young woman dressed in a bloody white wedding gown walking along the road looking for her groom. All of the accidents on this road are said to be associated with this one woman, since many of the survivors of these accidents claim that the last thing they saw before crashing was in fact this woman in white. This story is very similar to La Llorona if you guys remember my past videos. That is in the Texas video. How the woman passed away in the first place remains a complete mystery, but some claim that on their wedding night, the couple drove on these winding roads, but on one of the curves, they lost control and ended up in a nearby creek, with both of them passing away. Other drivers claim that they enter into their cars, and many of them become startled and crash when they look in their rearview mirror to see this bloody apparition. At a number 9 spot, we have the Fordham University Spirit Story. Before we begin, scenes from The Exorcist were shot here, so it was probably for good reason since they wanted to shoot a horror film at this university filled with the supernatural. In the summer of 2003, RAs in the place noticed that in one room the beds were propped up rather than lying on the floor. It wasn't until one day an RA awoke from knocking on his door. When he opened it, he saw a Jesuit priest who said he would take care of the mattresses. Except when the RA tried to figure out who the priest was, he discovered that the only Jesuit priest bearing that description had passed away 10 years ago. That's not all the ghosts within this university. It said that the spirit of a little girl who has been seen in the bathrooms is said to lurk and peek behind the shower curtains. Many other students revealed that they had sleep paralysis when inside the dorms, even though they had no such thing prior. Lastly, other students report being woken up due to the feeling of someone grabbing their neck and tugging their legs as if someone wants to drag them. At a number 8 spot, we have Rochester's White Lady. There's a White Lady scary urban legend in almost all cultures, so I had to mention one in New York as well. In Eastman Durham Park, visitors claim to see a crying woman asking where her daughter is. The story goes that in the early 1800s, a woman named Elisa lived in the area with her farmer husband. After a seemingly good start to their new home in Rochester, tragedy struck when Elisa's daughter suddenly disappeared. The story of her disappearance varies, but the most popular one is that the daughter asked Elisa if she can walk to the lake, but she never ended up returning. Regardless of what version you believe, the result is the same. People see the White Lady roam the perimeters of the lake, constantly wailing and asking for the location of her daughter. People claim that she is more aggressive towards men, but appears as more heartfelt and sorrowful for women. This could be because women are more likely to assist her in finding her daughter, but much of it is unknown. At a number 7 spot, we have the White Horse Tavern. This tavern was established all the way back in 1673, making it America's oldest tavern, as you can see from the sign in the front of the building. During the 18th century, the owner of the bar was reported to be a pirate and rum smuggler, and when the British authorities were hunting for him, he hid out in this tavern during the Revolutionary War and brought in many other soldiers with him, where a lot of them would pass away in that tavern. The most activity in the tavern is said to be located on the 2nd floor in the master bedroom. Story goes that a young girl passed away from smallpox in that room, and many guests hear the little girl singing, and some workers claim they see a little girl running around with a lemon and lime knife looking to attack unsuspecting victims. And remember that pirate owner I mentioned? Yeah, he would end up murdering someone in that very room, but that's all up for speculation still. Regardless, the world's oldest tavern had to have a few of their own ghost stories. At our number 6 spot, we have the Rolling Hills Asylum. Located in East Bethany, New York, this asylum was originally named the Genesee County Poor Farm. A poorhouse is a place where orphan children, families, the elderly, and where physically and mentally handicapped people go. All the people who passed away at the asylum were buried on the property grounds, which led many people to believe to be haunted throughout the entire area. The favorite entity spotted there is called Roy Crouse. The owner had an encounter with Roy the ghost. One day she went in and a rat went across the room. The rat startled her and then she went to scream and then left the asylum. The next day when she came back, she noticed a rat that startled her was found dead on the stairs with blood oozing out of it. Above that was a bloody handprint, presumably with the blood of the rat. She believes it was Roy helping her as the rat scared her pretty bad. Right in the hump of our list, we have the Curse of 1940. The Curse of 1940, or the Dutton's Curse, was a hex that was believed to cause NHL's New York Rangers not to win a Stanley Cup between 1941 all up until 1993. For all you non-hockey fans, the New York Rangers were very successful in their early years when they took 3 Stanley Cups, 1928, 1933, and 1940. After a 54-year wait, they won another Stanley Cup in 1994, but many fans believe the reason they haven't touched gold in so long is because of this curse. This was because in the 1939-40 season, the mortgage of the Madison Square Garden, which is the place where the Rangers played, was paid off, which led to management to burn the entire mortgage in the bowl of the cup. This led many to believe that the hockey gods put a curse on them. For example, in the 1950 Stanley Cup Finals, the Rangers had to play in the Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto for their home ice, which could be related to the fact that the MSG burned their mortgage, forcing them to play in another city, hence why they didn't win that year. I know sports curses are not scary at all, but for New York Rangers fans, this is the most terrifying thing they heard all year. At our number 4 spot, we have Palmyra Historical Museum. As the name suggests, this museum is located in Palmyra, New York. This building is thought to be over 200 years old and once served as a tavern and a hotel. It is now open to the public as a museum, but there's a reason why this one is on the list. The story goes that 6 days before Christmas 1964, a fire raged a small home which had Ruth Anna Breeden, her husband Paul, and 6 children inside. It was a supposed flash fire which engulfed the entire house quickly. The husband managed to escape, but the mother and her 6 children were found burnt in the basement underneath a mattress. Although the fire didn't happen in the museum per se, it sits on the home's foundation, meaning the basement is the exact same. This is why many guests claim to catch the scent of ash in the basement, because this is where the woman and her children lost their life. In the museum, guests also report toys being flown off shelves and even feeling their hair and clothes being tugged on. All the way at our number 3 spot, we have Vale Cemetery. After being opened in 1857, the historic Vale Cemetery became the largest cemetery in Schenectady, New York. After many years, guests will report some pretty eerie paranormal activity going on inside the cemetery. Many people had come forward, all reporting the same phenomenon, saying that the statues would bleed from their eyes. It's very important to note that all the people that came forward were not related in any sort of way, making all these accounts really genuine. Other people visiting the cemetery also claim that they've seen figures sitting in the trees above the tombstones and even full-blown full-blown apparitions of crying ghosts. The cemetery now has a total of 33,000 assigned plots, making it a spiritual hub. At our number 2 spot, we have the ghost ship of the Hudson River. Back when New York was just a small village, reports surfaced of a spooky ship floating on the river. Seen at dusk on foggy days, many say it was the spirit of the Henry Hudson's Half Moon ship. One of the reports came from an anonymous source of the weather dork that they referred to as Samuel. He was spending the day fishing on the shore of the Hudson, but then an odd ship caught his gaze. He claimed the ship was floating on air above the water, but as the ship got closer to him, he found that it had no crew on deck and had 3 empty masts. Regardless of the fact that it was floating, the ship could only be heard when it got closer, and the wood would be creaking as if it was on water when it wasn't. Eventually a storm came and slowly brought the ship back into the river, slowly disappearing into the darkness and the rain. If you listen to this story and get some Flying Dutchman vibes, you're right. All the way at our number 1 spot, we have the Amityville Horror House. It all started with an invitation from a news anchorman in Long Island. All the Warrens knew that there was a tragedy inside of the home, and the owners left after only living at the home for little less than a month. After Ed Warren spoke to the owner of the home, George Lutz, he quickly agreed to have them investigate. George was so horrified by the house that he only left the keys to the house and completely left the area. When the Warrens were in the house, they described feeling a powerful negative energy, calling it, quote, diabolically infested. Ed then entered the basement and felt immediate pressure, which pinned him on the floor. He commanded to Jesus Christ to leave, and it lifted it off of him. This was no regular paranormal case. The Warrens were unaware that 6 people were murdered in that home 7 months ago, where Ronald DeFeo Jr. murdered his entire family in that one night.
Starting off at number 10, Wakehurst Parkway, a stretch of roads spanning from Narrabee in Sydney's northern beaches. The Wakehurst Parkway is well known to locals as a hotspot for paranormal activity, with many vehicle-related passings occurring along the 14.6-kilometer stretch of road. Spooky stories range from seeing strange humanoids on the roadside to the unsettling urban legend of Kelly. According to the legend, Kelly appears as a younger girl who either stands in the middle of the road or appears in the backseat of cars. Apparently, if you don't demand she leaves the car, the driver will crash. The road has also been associated with gruesome crimes over the years, such as in 1994 when a 34-year-old Stephen Dempsey was shot in the heart with a crossbow at Deep Creek Reserve on the Wakehurst Parkway. His killer dumped his body in the creek but later returned to dismember it, taking it and putting it in a freezer. 1 year later, the body of 21-year-old Frances Tizone was found just meters from the Wakehurst Parkway in French's Forest, where her body had been dumped after being strangled by her ex-boyfriend. Now at number 9, Luna Park Ghost Train Fire. On June 9th, 1979, a devastating fire in Luna Park's Ghost Train ride, said to be the result of an electrical fault, claimed the lives of 7 people. 3 of the victims were Damien Godson, along with his father and 4-year-old brother, in what may have made for an eerie foreshadowing to the tragedy. Prior to their passings, the Godson family had been waiting for a ferry from Circular Way to Sydney's Luna Park, where they were approached by a satanic-looking figure dressed in a loincloth, mask, and horned headdress. The man reportedly came up to the family and placed his hand on 6-year-old Damien's shoulder, and a photo was taken. To this day, no one knows the identity of the man dressed as the demonic figure, but some believe that the horned man resembled the god Moloch, who asked for children to be sacrificed through fire or war, while others believe the man had been linked to a local satanic cult. Here at number 8, Ottaway's Panther. Supposedly, there have been alleged sightings of the elusive big cat, scurrying its way through the Ottaway Ranges, where the bush meets the beach off Victoria's Great Ocean Road. Supposed sightings of black panthers in the bush have been documented since the 1830s, ranging from rumors of big cats in the bush by New Eastern immigrants to sworn testimonies and videos taken in more recent years. All have given the legendary creature a similar description, a large, black, 4-legged creature very similar to a panther. Some explanations have been historical exotic animal traits, or an evolutionary trail of feral cats in the area, while others have suggested that they may have come from traveling circuses or visiting soldiers years ago. Similar sightings have also been reported in other states, including the Blue Mountains. It's said you can encounter this beast in the Great Ottaways National Park almost 3 hours southwest of Melbourne. Here at number 7, Picton Tunnels. The most famous of the Picton Tunnels in New South Wales, called the Mushroom Tunnel, was the first railway tunnel used by New South Wales Railways. During World War II, the tunnel had been used to store weapons and ammo. It's also said to be a hub of paranormal activity. After a lot of people taking their own lives, murder, and accidental passings. Many who have been brave enough to go into the tunnel have reported strange lights, cold spots, strange voices, and dark figures. There's also whispers that a mysterious lady in white who roams the tunnel inducing fear into anyone who is unlucky enough to see her. Is it just me, or does every country have its own lady in white? Number 6, Hawkesbury River Monster. It appears every place also has its own river or lake monster too, but you may have to see it to believe it. This is exactly what believers of the Hawkesbury River Monster claim to have seen. Also known as the Mooney Mooney Monster. Sightings of the mystic cryptid creature were reported in the 1800s, although Aboriginal rock art in the region describing a similar creature known as Mullywonk dates back to more than 3,000 years. Most accounts refer to the sea monster as grey, with a large eel-like body, elongated head, 4 flippers, and a thick tail. Allegedly, the water serpent may have been floating around Australia's shores since the Jurassic era, while modern legend hunters have not yet provided evidence of the existence of Australia's own Loch Ness Monster. Halfway at number 5, Yaramayahu. Vampire goblin, frog mutant, or mini monkey man? A cryptid creature also known as the outback vampire has been mentioned in Australian Aboriginal mythology since the Dreamtime. The Yaramayahu is said to be a tiny red man with a large head and no teeth, resembling that of a small monkey man or mini monster that drops from fig trees and uses suckers on the ends of its hands to devour human flesh. Though the idea may frighten tourists in the land of giant spiders and poisonous snakes, locals are much less concerned. While the tale of the outback vampire may have been used as an Australian bush urban legend, rather than proven sightings, you can look for the supposed creature in Red Centre Way. Number 4, Jandamara. In the 1890s, while working for police in the southern Kimberleys, Jandamara, an Aboriginal from Bonuba tribe, helped capture a large group of his own people. But upon seeing their suffering, Jandamara rebelled, shot a trooper, freed the captives, and stole guns. The story of an Aboriginal bounty hunter gunning down a white trooper raised local fears, and soon Jandamara became the most wanted man in the Kimberley. For nearly 3 years, Jandamara led police and outraged bounty hunters on wild goose chases throughout the area. His extensive knowledge of the local landscape allowed him to disappear at will, and helped fuel rumors that he may not have been human at all. When Jandamara couldn't be caught, the police brought in Mickey, an indigenous tracker from an opposing tribe. With skills equal to Jandamara's, Mickey did what was seemingly impossible for white troopers. He unraveled Jandamara's bush tricks, tracked him down, and supposedly shot him at his Tunnel Creek hideout. In the end, Jandamara's body was decapitated and the head sent to England to be displayed as a trophy. Number 3, Picnic at Hanging Rock. The story of Picnic at Hanging Rock tells of the mysterious disappearance of schoolgirls Miranda, Marion, and Irma, and their teacher Miss McCraw on Valentine's Day in 1900. The legend goes that the schoolgirls were drawn to the rock formation by supernatural forces, became dazed and confused, and were lost within the boulders and crevices, never to be heard or seen from again. The story originates from a novel by Joan Lindsay, who gave ambiguous answers when asked whether the story was in fact or fiction, and the haunting film only intensified to the legend. To this day, many people believe the disappearances were real, which still lures tourists to the area, much like the girls were lured to the rock. Number 2, the bunyip. Unfamiliar to the sights of an alien environment, early European settlers quickly took to the idea of a bunyip being the new creature waiting to be discovered, and set out on foolish attempts to find one in the hope and fame of riches. To various local Aboriginal tribes, however, this wasn't the case. The bunyip was a malevolent force that lurked at the bottom of creeks and billabongs, ready to devour anyone crazy enough to wander down at the wrong time. Bunyips have been reported to have horses' manes, dogs' faces, flippers, fangs, tusks, 2 eyes, shaggy fur, short hair, horns, and to be as big as a horse and as small as a dog. This apparently is one myth that has been embraced by Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians. Some say the legend of the bunyip stems from the Aboriginal ancestor memories of the Diprotodon australis, a 3-torn bear-like creature that was the biggest marsupial in existence before it became extinct around 40,000 years ago. Now coming in at number 1, Crown Casino Morgue. Despite the casino reportedly denying its existence, rumors have persisted for years that Melbourne's Crown Casino has its own morgue to cater to elderly gamblers who pass away or those who have died by taking their own lives after gambling within their establishment. According to the legend, there's a secret corridor and doors open out in the toilets to allow bodies to be taken away because people taking their own lives aren't glamorous for all the people spending money they can't afford to spend on gambling. Apparently, a person who knows someone who works at the Melbourne City Morgue said that they do have a morgue at the Crown Casino. It's said that the several secret passageways throughout the casino and hotel allow for the discreet removal of deceased people without raising a red flag to other guests. Despite Crown constantly shutting down the rumors, many continue to still believe the creepy whispers.
At a number 10 spot, we have the Chung Ek Genocidal Center. As the name suggests, this was a pure massacre and a horrible tragedy in Cambodia's long rich history. In the area around this genocidal center, approximately 17,000 people lost their lives and were buried, many whom were bound and blindfolded. blindfolded. For obvious reasons, these were known as the execution fields of Chong-ek. This is all but a reminder of some of the atrocities committed by the Khmer Rouge regime, who were known for their forced labor camps and malnourished citizens. Now back to the Chong-ek Genocidal Center. This is where the regime would take their prisoners to be executed and now serves as a memorial for this mass grave. The center even features a Buddhist stupa filled with different human skulls retrieved from the field, ranging from the elderly to some babies. Now many feel uncomfortable walking these grounds and sense the presence of those who are suffering there. Many others claim to see the apparition of Pol Pot, who is the leader of this devastating regime. But regardless, knowledge is power, and hopefully this educates us to never go down this route again.
Number 9. Haunted house on National Road. According to some, this is the most haunted place in Cambodia. There are many stories that describe it as a very mysterious island where a lot of people have either passed away or disappeared without a trace. Now on National Road number 5, from Kampong Chang province to Prasat province in Cambodia, just 5 minutes driving from Steung Bribo Bridge, on the right hand side, there's a house that most people stop by to pay their respect to a famous ghost house. There's a very large monument built because a family that didn't particularly want to live created a curse. The curse took residents in a pit they threw themselves in to take their lives. Eventually, people who drove near it started to pass away. It was also said that the residents who lived nearby started to pass away around World War II. At the time, it was a wooden house, but now it's concrete.
At number 8 spot, we have Boker Hill Station. Boker Hill Station once served as a French settlement town and a hideout for the Khmer Rouge regime. Remember that terrible communist party I mentioned earlier? Through its time, many lives were claimed due to the hard labor needed to build all this infrastructure. This town even saw a war with the invasion of Vietnam. This regime used this place as one of their last strongholds, so many lives were lost defending it. Now it lies completely abandoned with only the rundown buildings to show for it. Fortunately, the place opened up for tourism, but many people report feeling sadness walking along these blood-stained grounds. Many people visit the old hotel in the town and they claim to see the apparitions in the corner of the rooms, standing there just watching them. Didn't think it was scary yet? Imagine this place at night. Boom, terrifying.
Now at number 7, Tuol Sleng Genocide Museum. In the 1970s, this former high school was converted into the notorious S-21 prison by the Khmer regime, where an estimated 20,000 prisoners were executed. Souls of the victims who were detained, starved, tortured, and executed are said to be roaming the S-21 hall. Many unusual incidences have been reported there, including the guards who hear moaning and chains rattling at night. Today, the school or prison has been transformed into a museum where the ghosts of the deceased are still said to haunt the halls. Of the 20,000 prisoners that experienced the horror of S-21, only approximately 6 to 12 are rumored to have survived the genocide. The museum employees even leave food out for the ghosts during their lunch breaks. They say that if they don't leave an offering, they can't enjoy their own lunches in peace due to loud noises and other ghostly activities.
At number 6 spot, we have the Independence Hotel. This hotel in Sihanoukville, Cambodia is thought to be haunted by one of its former residents. The wealthy and the famous quickly filled the rooms of the hotel after its 1964 construction. After a few years of prosperity, the hotel closed its doors in the mid-1970s to become a base for the Khmer Rouge soldiers. We can't escape this regime, can we? Rumors claim that the hotel conducted mass killings while using the swimming pool to house prisoners. It was abandoned and allowed to deteriorate before being restored in 1982 and serving as a hangout for UNTAC troops in the early 1990s. It was then shut down in 1999 and had a significant renovation and reopened to visitors in 2007. Despite the reopening, the new paint couldn't mask the atrocities done within the hotel. Guests would report cold spots in the rooms, and others would report an infamous spirit of a young girl who took her own life in one of the rooms, or even the aggressive spirits of the 4 robbers who were reportedly shot down in the mid-90s at the hotel. Think you can do a day at this hotel? Cause I can't.
Halfway, number 5, Banana Ghost Tree. The story goes that a husband was sent abroad for business, and while away, the wife got sick and passed away. Her spirit became vengeful and started haunting the people of their village. When the husband returned, not knowing about his wife's passing, he quickly realized that the woman he found was not his wife, but her ghost when she unnaturally made her arm longer. He ran away from their house seeking help, but even after a proper burial, his deceased wife followed him to a Buddhist monk's house where he sought safety. As he was reciting prayers with closed eyes, his wife's ghost climbed one of the many banana trees near the monk's house, entered through a window, and immediately took the life of the man. A belief which many people still follow stems from this legend forbidding people from planting banana trees next to their houses, as her ghost spirit could enter through the house by climbing in on a banana leaf. If there was already a banana tree growing close by, all of the banana tree's leaves touching or near the house would usually be cut off for safety.
At a number 4 spot, we have Kokor. Kokor is an island approximately 20 kilometers outside of the capital city of Cambodia. This place is a complete tropical paradise, but as they say, beauty is often deceiving. Turns out this island is nicknamed Murder Island, and it got this name because, you guessed it, the Khmer Rouge regime was here, and they established a prison where they would use it as an execution site. This prison was estimated to have claimed the lives of thousands of people due to physical abuse and malnourishment. This is why many residents of the island claim to see the ghosts of the former prisoners wearing their black shirts and crying out for help in the middle of the night. They even left a brutal display of the remains of those who lost their life on this island. Don't know about you, but I'm still hung up on the fact that it's called Murder Island. Shouldn't this be a no-brainer for all of you guys as well?
Now at number 3, Champa Pagoda. During the broadcasting of a horrific night, a local radio programmee served as a channel for Cambodian people who would call in and share their paranormal experiences. Noah Vaseth, a government official residing in Stung Treng and a dedicated listener who tuned in on the show every Saturday and Sunday, said his life was almost taken by the ghosts while traveling along the road in front of Champa Pagoda in the Vey district. His story was this: it was 10 p.m. and I was on my way home from work. Suddenly, a bike ran into me. I avoided it and fell over, and then the bike just disappeared into thin air. This is not the first story of its kind to have been reported. Many claim that they have experienced similar incidences while traveling in the area, which is well known for being a place where hundreds of people passed from traffic accidents.
At number 2 spot, we have the Kampong Cham Ghost House. In 2005, the movie The Haunted House was filmed in this house. Before the shooting, all the actors prayed and made a super ceremony to pay respect to the spirit inside the house. According to rumors, a young couple moved to this newly built house. They dreamed that someone offered to buy a house for $3,000 in net gold. They immediately agreed, and the next morning, they woke up and they saw the gold was placed at the door of the house. But they did not move despite taking the gold. One day after waking up, they found themselves lying on the wilderness with their belongings. Since then, no one has dared to step into the house, and it supposedly doesn't have a speck of dust inside of it to this day.
Now coming in at number 1, Old Shingji Hospital. The now abandoned hospital was built in 1935 by the British colonial government as part of a military base camp in the area. It included 2 military buildings, blocks 24 and 37, that were part of the Kitchener Barracks, which housed the Royal Engineers of the British Army. However, the hospital's peak was short-lived, with the grounds being seized by Japanese troops in 1942 and used as a holding ground for prisoners of war. During the occupation, the hospital was said to have been used as a torture facility by the Japanese secret police, based on the fact that there were rooms with thick chains hanging from the walls and blood-stained floors. Before and after its closure in 1997, visitors and hospital guards claimed to have seen phantoms resembling nurses and soldiers roaming its corridors, as well as hearing unexplainable hellish shrieks. A movie was even filmed on the site, and the crew reported strange occurrences with unexplainable sounds, disembodied voices, and sightings of ghostly figures. Kicking off this countdown at number 10, Abandoned Chambers in Chucaloma. This abandoned chamber is located basically in the middle of nowhere, about 8 kilometers from the closest inhabited village called Chucaloma. Formerly a charming mansion filled with life, it was built in a big village called Ostashevo, which died out in the 20th century due to the rapid urbanization process the Soviet Union faced. The landlord of the mansion was a rich businessman from St. Petersburg who constructed it as a present for his second wife, who was an Ostashevo local. The chamber is built in pseudo-Russian style, an unusual mix of Slavic and Byzantine architecture. Nowadays, the mansion looks more like a horror house from Russian-style thrillers and is almost completely forgotten, except for the group of enthusiastic bloggers gathering money to revive it. The mansion is within walking distance from the village, but it would be wise to ask a local to give you directions. Now at number 9, Katachan Village. Officially known as a depopulated community, this Russian village actually looks like a ghost town rather than anything else. Originally, this place was established as a coal mining village, but the corporation shut doors due to numerous incidences there. As a result, the locals soon left the village and settled in other communities, without even packing all of their possessions. By the end of 2010, the village in Matagan Oblast was almost completely deserted. It virtually had no official residents. This place is rarely visited by travelers since there's not much to see around it anyway. Now, as this village is not just one building itself, there's multiple buildings in the village, but they are all very spooky looking, and the abandoned park in the middle of the village is even creepier than the rest. The coal mining in the area just became unprofitable. One mine was simply shut down in 1992, while the other had exploded in 1996 and ended up unfortunately taking the lives of 6 people. Back in the late 80s, more than 10,000 people lived in this village, and they had everything. I mean shops, restaurants, movie theaters, a house of culture, and so much more. However, in 2012, 2 people were spotted in the area, and it was reported it seemed like they had been living in this insanely creepy deserted village. Here at number 8, Brzezinski Mansion. This mansion is also located in St. Petersburg. Unnoticeable from the street, this charming abandoned mansion is located in the industrial district of Vasilivsky Island in St. Petersburg. It was built by Petersburger Nikolai Brzezinski, the rich owner of the local tannery. The mysterious story of the building claims that here the famous Dracula mirror is being kept in a secret hiding place between the walls. According to local legend, the mirror was brought here in the 20th century from the Venetian Palazzo, where the dust of Dracula was kept. Soon after the mirror appeared in the mansion, the granddaughter of the landlord suddenly passed away. After the revolution, the mirror was taken to the local Kirov Palace of Culture and then returned to the mansion. After 2 more passings of residents of the mansion, the decision was made to hide the mirror in a secret place inside the building. Coming in at number 7, Sanatorium Energy. The old sanatorium was a long abandoned place that wasn't used for decades until one day when the town decided to transform the building into something else. The former sanatorium would probably be torn down completely, but at least the grounds would be used for the construction of something better. What's interesting about this place is that it's located just outside of Moscow, nearby a few ponds that are major hotspots for fishers. So hopefully the new buildings will be able to cater to those specific visitors who may spend a night or 2 here while fishing nearby the lakes or ponds. Now at number 6, Northern Crown. This one is a place that gathers a lot of mystery and has had a lot of weird incidences. The hotel was an extraordinary and very luxurious place until 1988 when the Soviet Union compromised the property in order to overlook the Krubovki River. Unfortunately, due to the lack of money, the construction was postponed. And since then, the inner side is luxurious, but the outer side of the hotel is abandoned. The story says that the reason was the passing of a nun of St. Pete, who suddenly passed in an honor reception. While this place looks luxurious and beautiful, now that it's somewhat abandoned, it looks pretty scary. Halfway at number 5, the grain elevator. This grain elevator was built right on the fringe of the Ural city of Chelyabinsk. Once the construction of the railway was completed, Chelyabinsk automatically became a pretty significant trade station between eastern and western Russia. The result was a gigantic 8-story building that served as a symbol of the town. It practically resembled a giant skyscraper rising high from the ground. In only several years, the other districts of the city developed so much the grain elevator simply fell into abandonment. Now I know the building doesn't have any ghost stories behind it, but it definitely looks like it could be tied to something like a haunted asylum.
All this was the structure of the elevators where the grain been stored. And this is like the main building, the main office building was here.
Here at number 4, Dagdizel plant. This odd building is known as the Dagdizel plant in Dagestan. Initially, Dagdizel plant was used as a test center for the military department in Russia. According to the original plan, it had to be put in operation by 1939. However, the idea was actually short-lived since the military needs sort of changed over the years. Well, this Russian test center still resides in the Caspian Sea, but it's hardly ever used for anything anyway. On top of that, Dagdizel plant is located almost over 2 miles from the shore, so getting there isn't really easy whatsoever. Today, its only visitors are the birds that have made the land theirs. This weird looking thing in the middle of the water just screams horrifying just from a picture. Coming in at number 3, the unseen side of Leningrad. Saying that the scenery of this place isn't at all spooky would be the biggest lie ever. This insane site was built near the village of Seperny and is considered the largest decoration for a military movie. In fact, the entire town was built on an abandoned military base. The movie project engaged over hundreds of builders to set up the scene, and the whole process took between 4 to 6 months, and over $5 million to complete. It's not hard to see that the decoration is filled to the brim with bizarre details, including these children-looking statues that seem to be playing Ring Around the Rosie, which for starters has always been a creepy song and an odd game to play. I mean, the lyrics in the song are ashes, ashes, we all fall down. Now at number 2, Atomic Lighthouse. The Atomic Lighthouse, constructed by the Russian architect Murray Shinobu, was built on the Sakhalin Island in the mid-90s. It was in fact a very complicated building, a technical one that had to be a unique creation. Kapanava's lighthouse used a diesel generator to get going, although it also had some backup batteries. In the late 90s, the Atomic Lighthouse was retrofitted with more power as a way to save more money. However, somehow it eventually became abandoned anyway. So the building now sits lonesome by the sea, hopelessly waiting for a new potential reconstruction. But with the clouds and all the decay the building has already experienced, I'm not sure anyone would want to even go near that thing, let alone build something else in its place.
So this is floor number 3. This looks like it was probably the living quarters. People lived here, like season round. There had to be someone here at all times manning the lighthouse itself. Looks like the walls have been painted blue. The reason why I think this is also living quarters is it's the only level that we've seen with the space heater on it. Got a shelf and then a closet right there.
Taking our number 1 spot, Maternity Hospital. This building was constructed at the end of the 18th century on the territory of the hospital for participants in the Patriotic War of 1812 against the French army of Napoleon, and initially was a general district hospital. It became a maternity hospital in the second half of the 20th century and was closed for reconstruction in 2009. The plan of this 2-story building resembles the Russian letter with a basement and attic. The ceilings are more than 5 meters high, and in spite of the fact that the building is totally abandoned, it still has central heating and is rather clean. Bloggers and people passionate about abandoned sites visit it on a fairly regular basis. The hospital is situated in the region of Vladimir, 186 kilometers to the east of Moscow. As maternity hospitals are usually good places to welcome new children into the world, this place is terrifying and no place for children now.